Meta spent $15 billion building a world nobody wanted to visit. That is not a metaphor. That is the audited figure. $15 billion poured into a virtual reality platform between 2021 and 2023. And at its peak, the metaverse was attracting fewer active users than a mid-sized city's local Facebook group. Internal documents leaked to the Wall Street Journal in 2023 revealed that Horizon Worlds, the flagship product of this entire bet, had fewer than 200,000 monthly active users. Meta had projected tens of millions. This is not a story about a product that failed to find an audience. This is a story about a company that had the data, had the warnings, and spent the money anyway. Let's start with the crime scene. In October 2021, Mark Zuckerberg stood on a digital stage and announced that Facebook was becoming Meta. The name change alone cost the company an estimated $10 billion in brand equity, according to analysts at Kantar. The reasoning was straightforward. Facebook, the social network, had a reputation problem, and the metaverse was the escape hatch. Pivot the corporate identity toward a frontier technology, and the regulatory scrutiny, the congressional hearings, the whistleblowers. All of that was reframed as yesterday's concern, except the product was not ready. And internally, Meta's own teams knew it. Leaked memos from 2022 described Horizon Worlds as buggy, disorienting, and hard to use. One internal reviewer noted that employees at Meta were not spending time in the platform voluntarily. A senior engineer reportedly wrote that the app simply is not good enough. These are not the reviews of a scrappy startup finding its footing. These are the internal assessments of a company that had already committed billions to a launch timeline it could not walk back. The avatars did not have legs. This became the defining symbol of the entire debacle. In a promotional video meant to showcase the metaverse's social potential, Zuckerberg's digital avatar floated, legless, across virtual Paris. The internet noticed immediately. For a platform promising to replicate human presence and connection, the absence of something as fundamental as legs communicated everything. Meta eventually added legs in 2023, announcing it as a milestone achievement. By that point, the damage was already written into the quarterly reports. Reality Labs, the division responsible for the metaverse, lost $13.7 billion in 2022 alone. The following year, it lost another $13.7 billion. In 2 years, $27 billion. The losses were not narrowing. They were holding steady at a level that would have bankrupted most technology companies entirely. Meta could absorb it because of the advertising revenue machine running underneath, but the board was watching, and investors were not staying quiet. Here is what makes this case particularly instructive. Meta was not operating in the dark. The signals were everywhere. Microsoft launched its own enterprise metaverse product in 2022, designed for corporate meeting rooms. They shut it down in 2023 after 18 months, calling it ahead of its time. Epic Games, the company behind Fortnite, was simultaneously building what most industry analysts considered a more compelling virtual world, and they were doing it without the word metaverse anywhere in the marketing. Decentraland, the blockchain-based virtual world that received enormous hype during the crypto boom, was reporting a few thousand daily active users by late 2022. The signals were consistent. Users did not want to strap on a headset and attend a meeting in virtual Prague. They wanted what they had always wanted: content, games, connection, and they had other ways to get it. Zuckerberg's response to the criticism followed a pattern worth examining. In public, he maintained that the metaverse was a 10-year bet. In earnings calls, he insisted the platform was growing. In reality, Meta quietly began shifting its public messaging by mid-2023. The word metaverse started disappearing from press releases. Horizon Worlds received a visual overhaul and a new promotional push. Neither moved the numbers meaningfully. What did move the numbers was artificial intelligence. By late 2023, Zuckerberg had identified the pivot he needed. Meta's artificial intelligence research division, which had been quietly building some of the most capable open-source large language models in the industry, became the new story. Llama, Meta's large language model, was released publicly. Artificial intelligence features were integrated across Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook. The Metaverse was not officially declared dead. It was simply no longer mentioned first. This is where the prosecution rests its most important argument. The Metaverse was not a failed experiment in the way that term is usually meant, as an honest attempt at something difficult that simply did not work out. It was a strategic misdirection at a moment of institutional crisis. When Facebook faced its most serious reputational and regulatory pressure in 2021, the Metaverse gave Wall Street a new story to believe in, gave the press a new narrative to cover, and gave Zuckerberg a new identity to inhabit. The billions spent on Reality Labs were not purely product investment. They were, in part, the cost of changing the subject. The employees who built Horizon Worlds, the engineers who added legs to avatars, the designers who tried to make virtual meeting rooms feel like something a person would choose to walk into, they were working on a real product. The technology is genuinely complex. The vision of persistent, interconnected virtual spaces is not inherently absurd. But none of that changes the structural reality. The product was launched before it was ready. It was sustained long after the data made its failure clear. And then it was quietly set aside when a more compelling narrative became available. Meta's stock, which fell roughly 65% during 2022 as Reality Labs' losses mounted, recovered spectacularly in 2023 and 2024. Not because of the Metaverse, because of artificial intelligence, because of cost cutting that eliminated more than 20,000 employees, because the advertising business, which never needed the Metaverse to function, kept functioning. The $15 billion is gone. The platform still exists, technically. You can still create an avatar and walk through virtual worlds in Horizon Worlds today. But the internal target of 500,000 monthly active users that Meta set for itself in 2022 was never reached. The company that promised to build the successor to the mobile internet instead built a cautionary case study about the difference between announcing a vision and delivering one. What happens to the technology itself is still an open question. Apple's Vision Pro, released in 2024, demonstrated that high-quality spatial computing hardware is possible, and also that consumers are not yet willing to pay for it at scale. The underlying infrastructure Meta built, the hand-tracking systems, the social presence research, the spatial audio work, that does not disappear. It gets absorbed into whatever comes next. But the Metaverse, as Zuckerberg defined it in October 2021, as the inevitable future of human connection, as the platform that would make Facebook's social graph feel like a warm-up act, that version is over. The autopsy finding is straightforward. The cause of death was not technology. It was the decision to ship a story before shipping a product, and to sustain that story long after the evidence demanded a different conclusion. If you want more breakdowns of the moments where the biggest companies in Silicon Valley got it catastrophically wrong, subscribe. There are more autopsies to come.